The Himba people live as nomadic pastoralists, moving around this remote area in search of grazing for their cattle. In this land of rock and stone, the Himba are remarkably successful. They own thousands of head of cattle. But the ancient way of life they represent is under threat from modern Africa. It's a lifestyle that has proved to be remarkably resilient over the years. The Himba people have survived all sorts of catastrophes, including German colonialism, war and famine. But the plans to build a dam in this area may well prove to be the death knell for the Himba. The dam would drown the valley many Himba regard as sacred, the place where their ancestors are buried. It would bring in thousands of migrant workers with their modern ways and modern diseases. The elders of the Himba are not taking the threat to their land and lifestyle lying down. They've enlisted the help of lawyers from the capital Windhoek to represent them in their battle with the government. They gathered for a two-day meeting to discuss their strategy. But the government is not sympathetic to the Himba. As we were filming, 9 heavily armed police from a special unit arrived and broke up the meeting. They said the gathering was illegal and banned it.
What you're doing is unlawful. It's against the law of Namibia, and I can tell you that as a fact.
For the lawyers, the heavy-handed police intervention is reminiscent of the time when South Africa ruled Namibia with an iron fist.
It was pure intimidation. They had no basis on which to interfere with that meeting. And it reminded us of the days in the past when we were put under, and our clients were put under this kind of threat before independence by the South African Defence Force.
Almost 1,000 kilometers and a world away, this is the image of Namibia the government wants to promote. It denies intimidating the Himbas into change, but at the same time, government policy is to bring the remote regions into the modern world.
They need to have access to new hospitals and clinics. They need to cope with the vagaries of nature, the heat, the cold, by putting on what everybody else has, ties and suits, rather than being half naked and half dressed.
But not wearing clothes is regarded by the Himbas as an essential part of their way of life. Top-down development from government could destroy not just their culture, but them as well.
It's not a question of preserving these people in their ochre and their skins, keeping them in some mythical past that tour operators and foreign tourists enjoy seeing. That's nonsense, and that is not what one would like to see for the Himba people. But they have a right to decide what they want.
The planned dam would inundate a huge area around the picturesque Apupa Falls. This would cut the Himba off from the river that is their lifeblood. In times of drought, this is the only place where the tribe can find water for their cattle herds.
The government is saying they will build the dam by force, whether the Himba people like it or not. So when they come to build the dam, all the people in the area will gather there on that day, and they will have to build the dam on top of us.
There seems to be very little room for compromise. Change is coming to the Himba. The government will release the results of a feasibility study on the dam in September. Few doubt that they're determined to go ahead with the project, heralding an end to the Himba's unique way of life and their intimate relationship with their surroundings. Richard Downs, BBC News, Northern Namibia.
Time for a look at the weather now, which I think is going to start in Europe. Here's John Kelly.
Only briefly, because I'm only comparing the temperature.
In Russia's space program, nothing's been left to chance. The fresh crew's been practicing on a submerged mock-up of Mir. It's the nearest they'll get to the weightlessness they'll experience in space when they try to patch up a hole and sort out some damaged solar panels. The space station's had an accident-prone history, especially in recent weeks. In June, an unmanned spacecraft collided with Mir, causing damage and reducing power. The next month, one of the crew unplugged the wrong cable and sent it spiraling out of control for a time. 4 days later, the Russians decided the 3 on board were too exhausted to carry out a spacewalk and repair the damage caused in June. That task will fall to the relief crew, who should arrive in 2 days' time. They'll blast off later today from Baikonur in neighbouring Kazakhstan. Russia's space centre is fast becoming a museum. A shortage of cash means these rockets lie abandoned in hangars. Mir is the jewel in a damaged crown. Russia's relying on it being repaired, as America pays millions of pounds every year to use the clapped-out 11-year-old space station. Peter Hunt, BBC News.
And with me in the studio is our science correspondent, James Wilkinson. James, what exactly have the cosmonauts got to do now?
Well, they have a very busy time ahead of them. They've got to do no fewer than 6 spacewalks. They've got to go into the damaged Spectre module, a so-called internal spacewalk, and try and reconnect the cables that were severed when they had to slam the hatch after the accident. Then they've got to go outside the spacecraft, have a look around, see if they can find out where the leaks in the Spectre module are, and they're thought to be possibly 3 holes in the Spectre module. They may even have to remove insulation and have a look at them, see if they can repair them. They're going to have to try and cut away or unbolt the damaged solar panel and get rid of that. So they really have a very busy time. And in addition to all the spacewalks, they're going to do another manned docking with a Progress supply vehicle. That was the problem that went wrong before, you remember. That's what caused the collision originally. So they're going to try have another go at that. So they're really very busy.
I was going to say, that's a fairly Herculean task they've got to undertake there. What are the chances of success?
Well, I think they're fairly good. They're very confident about it. They've got plenty of equipment with them. I mean, originally there were going to be 3 men on board this vehicle that goes up today, but they dropped the Frenchman, partly because there wasn't enough power on board for him to do his experiments, and partly because if they dropped him, they could put more repair kit on board. And so they've got plenty of supplies with them, and they're confident they will be able to do it.
Now, the Russians have fared pretty badly out of this whole Mir saga, haven't they? Presumably the success of this is absolutely crucial to them now.
Yes, I mean, they are very concerned that it does go well. They have made mistakes. It was announced recently that the chap who actually unplugged the computer which sent the space station spinning in orbit was in fact the second in command, Lazutkin. People thought originally that it was Sibiliev, the commander.
Well, they weren't going to name him originally, were they? It seems a bit unfair now they've actually done that.
It's come out that it was the second in command, so it was, at least it wasn't Michael Foale, which one is relieved to hear. But anyway, yes, the Russians haven't done too well on that, but they have, accidents do happen. The commanders, the mission controllers are pleased on the whole with the way it's gone. And Michael Foale has made the very interesting point that because of these accidents, they have learned a tremendous amount, not only in how to deal with emergencies in space, but also how to get on with the Russians, how to work with them. And that's just going to be vital when they come to man the International Space Station in a few years' time.
Well, fingers crossed. James Wilkinson, thanks very much.
Emergencies closer to the ground now. An airline pilot